Welcome back, my beautiful souls. Thank you so much for joining me for part 2. I just want to say a couple of things before we get started. So part 2 is more adult only. It's going to be a little bit more darker in the sense of the things that I'm going to go into, maybe a little bit much for some people. So please proceed with caution. I'm giving you the realest, rawest form of me and my experiences as I possibly can. So again, not a lot of edits, maybe some repeating words. It is what it is. And just know that this is going to be lengthy. I do have timestamps in the descriptions below for you. So if you need to skip forward or whatever, just feel free to do what you need to do. But again, thank you so much for walking with me on this journey. It has been a long time coming, but I am just so glad that I get to finally release this video in hopes to help those ones who are going through similar situations to know that you're not alone. This is my story. I remember as a single mom, I was doing so good for so long. You know, I was working, I was in a religion teaching my children all the laws and teaching my children the Bible, studying with them, going out fifth service, being what I knew to be in this religion. And I remember just as a single mom, it can still be hard, you know, because I was married and I had a husband and then we didn't work out. And so now I'm here and trying to, you know, be everything and everyone to my kids and myself, and still, of course, maintain my faithfulness. But I've always been a person who loves to love, and I always wanted to share my life with someone. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of pickings of men in the congregation. And you think about just in the world in general, there's more women than men. It's even less for this religion. There's like less brothers who are out here and who is in this religion compared to the sisters. Still way more women than men. And so as a single mother raising her children, it was difficult because I wanted a husband. I wanted to share my life with someone, but there wasn't any either no brothers that we are attracted to, or this area there was just no brothers available because they were dating other sister, or they just weren't getting themselves together. So it was very hard to find a man. So I remember me and my friend and her family and other brothers and sisters who went on a cruise. And my mom and my dad, they kept the kids while I went on the cruise. And this was the first time of me being by myself, really, without the boys, like for a long-term time. And so I met this Jamaican. I met this guy on the boat. He was a drummer. And I was really attracted to him. And I remember he just made me feel so beautiful. And of course I was lonely, you know, as a single mother. I didn't have anyone, and I felt for him on the boat. And I remember kind of sneaking around the boat and hiding, and I was able to go see him. And we didn't have sex, but we got really personal. We got really intimate. But we didn't, you know, do anything. But, you know, things, boundaries were crossed. Things I shouldn't have been doing as a Jehovah's Witness happened. And I remember feeling so guilty. I was so devastated. I was so guilty. I felt horrible because I knew that what I was doing was not what I am taught is right. I knew that and again, I think about this. What I was doing, now I think about it, it was just me embracing my sexuality. It was me embracing that romantic side of me. And as a single woman who's grown, It was just me like exploring those feelings. But because the religion teaches us that you only can do that if, and these you gotta think about when it comes to dating, the religion is very strict. So you have to have a chaperone. It doesn't matter what age. Even if you're 50 years old, you have to have someone else with you and this other person. And the reason why they do that is because, you know, sex before marriage is forbidden. And so to prevent any thing like that happening, you have to be in the presence of another person. And that was like the laws of the Bible, and that was what we were told. And so I was going against the Bible when I went and snuck off with him by myself. Even though I didn't have sex with him, we still touched each other, and, you know, we caressed each other and stuff like that. But I didn't have sex with him. You know, I didn't like ultimately sin and do that, but I felt horrible. I felt like I might as well would have had sex with him. It was really, really difficult. And I got to the point where I couldn't hold it in anymore. And, you know, the religion teaches you that when you commit a sin, if you want to be approved by God, you have to come forth and you have to confess. And you have to talk to the brothers, and then they will determine if you are repentant. So, I was really in a bad place at that point. I didn't tell anybody for a whole month what I did, but it kept eating away at me. Because I've always been a loyal servant in this religion. I've always been at the point where, and I was baptized at this point, and I took my baptism very seriously. So I just really couldn't take it. My guilt was eating at me. I felt so guilty for what I did when I didn't really look at it do anything. But again, the things I did was like, 'cause again, every aspect is controlled, and the things that I did was not acceptable. So I felt so guilty, and I went to the brothers and told them. I think I went to my mom and told her first that I, did some things with this guy, and I feel so guilty about it. And then she was like, well, you're gonna have to talk to the brothers. And it's just so cringy. It's cringy, the process, because you're embarrassed. You don't want to tell your parents, you don't want to tell anybody that you did something that wasn't approved, or you did something with a guy. I mean, I'm a grown ass woman. Pardon my French, but I'm a grown ass fucking woman. And I had to sit here, and now that I think about it, I had to sit here and confess like I was a child. The whole process to me is just belittling, but I knew that in order for me to get past this, I had to come forth and repent. So this is something I'm about to tell you that most people don't know about the process of Jehovah's Witness. So what I'm about to tell you guys is something that you may not know, and it's something that you probably wouldn't expect, but it happens, and this is my story. When I told the brothers about the situation with this guy, I had to meet, and there's a process when you commit a sin and you repent and you're trying to come forth and do right, because again, it's always ingrained, it's always instilled in us that in order for you to be saved at the end, God knows what you did. So if you truly want to be saved, if you truly want to be approved by God, you need to come forth and you need to repent. And it's even set up too that if you, let's say you tell a friend who is a Jehovah's Witness, they're under obligation to come to the brothers and tell them, or they will be considered as guilty as well. So it's just such a serious issue that's brought up that it scares you. It's just so scary, because you're thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to be saved. I'm doomed. I'm going to die. In the end, I'm not going to have salvation. So I have to do this. And this is how it is presented, that as if it's so serious, and this is a requirement. So the process when you commit a sin is you have to meet with what the organization called the Judicial Committee. But the Judicial Committee is either 3 or 4 brothers, 2 or 3, maybe 2, 3 or 4 brothers. Usually it's just 2 or 3 brothers These are elders in our congregation that you meet with. They're a part of the judicial committee, and that committee determines if you're repentant or not. They make different decisions in the congregation, and one of those decisions is when you repent, when you commit a sin, you have to meet with them, and they will determine if you're repentant, and at that point, you're judged. That's pretty much what it is. You're judged on if you're repentant or if you're not. And that's how people get kicked out of the congregation, because if you go in there and you talk to these brothers, and they determine that you're not repentant, then you're out. You're out. So my personal experience was when I knew I was going, and I think about this, I'm grown. Like I think this was when I was like in my 20s with 2 kids, working hard, but still having to tell them about my personal discretion. So it really is embarrassing process. It's very devastating for me, and anyone I can imagine, because it was just a lie. It was depressing. It was just so, now I look at it, so cringy that I had to go through this process. But I was at this point knowing that I could not feel guilty like this anymore. I couldn't have this over me anymore. I had to release it, so I had to go forth. So I made the decision to go to the brothers and talk to them about it after talking to my parents, of course. I remember meeting with 3 brothers, and these were brothers, elders, who I knew since I was a child, because in religion, you think about it, since I was 4. So these brothers who were in this particular judicial committee, we went gathers with them. We traveled with these brothers. You know, they knew me since I was a little girl. They saw me grow up, and here I am having to confess that I did something with another man to these brothers. So I'm sitting in here with the brothers, and I explained to them that what happened. I'm devastated, and I'm crying the whole time because this is so embarrassing, and I feel so low. I feel so unworthy. I just feel I just feel the worst, and I'm in such a low place because this is super humiliating to do this, but I knew I had to do it. Now, what gets me is this. They asked certain questions in this meeting, and the questions that people don't understand that they ask, they go into specifics, and they're very personal. So you just telling them that you did something is not enough. I at this point, all I did was, like, I did a couple things, not any, we touched on each other and stuff like that, and we kissed and we caressed each other, but we didn't have sex. He didn't penetrate me. None of those things happened. So technically, I did not, do much, but the things that I did were what we considered sinning, because he wasn't a witness, and he wasn't someone I was going to potentially marry. So this was going against the Bible principles. So the questions that they asked me, though, I wasn't even thinking about it at the time, that this was just so inappropriate. But when I was in the meeting with them, they asked me questions such as, so what happened? And I told them the basics, and that wasn't enough. And they asked me what did he touch? I had to give specifics on what happened. I had to go into details. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. You're already humiliated. You're already feeling like this is so much to deal with in the beginning, because you're already feeling ashamed of yourself, because I went against the Bible principles, right? And then now you're asking me all these extra personal questions, such as, where did he touch me? I remember being asked, where did he touch me? Did I perform any oral on him? I was like, no. Like, did he, touch me certain ways? And it was just so humiliating. I did the best I could to answer the questions, and I was as honest as possible, and I just felt disgusted. I felt so humiliated, and I just felt so judged, like dirty. Like I just was not worthy of anything. I just felt horrible. And then they don't even make the decision right then. They make you wait. I had to wait a couple days, because they had to talk about it. They had to get together and they had to pray and talk about it. And they shared some scriptures with me to try to help me to see that this is something that we need to do to cleanse you with oil. And, it was scriptures shared to try to encourage me. And I can truly say these brothers were loving brothers. They were really good brothers. I know them personally, and they were part of our family. But it was just, the situation was so humiliating. It was like the questions that were asked, it was just unnecessary. And I just felt horrible. Like, why are we asking these questions? I feel bad about them. I'm just telling you what happened. And I have to go into details now? Like, it was so humiliating. It was one of my lowest points of my life. Now, to add insult to injury, after waiting a few days, which seems like weeks, I was able to meet with them again, and at that point, they always add some scriptures in there to kind of talk to me about the situation and how God's viewpoint is about it. And I was pretty much given I was pretty much said that I was going to be on public reproof, because I had actually at the time shared some of what happened to a friend, and because of that they had to put me on public reproof, because they do ask you too, did you tell anybody about this? Does anybody know what happened? Because if so, now you're bringing a bad name on God's organization. So I had to be put on public reproof. So just to kind of explain to you, public reproof is, so when you commit a sin, you either are forgiven, no one knows about it in the congregation, they just tell you, we're going to monitor it, they pray over you, and again, they'll tell you, you're fine, nothing's wrong, you can continue being Jehovah's Witness and continue serving God or whatever, there's no repercussions. But if you are put on public reproof, that means that publicly we have to reprove you. So we're going to have to announce that you did something in the congregation. We're going to have to announce to the full congregation, because we're told that everything's out in the open. We share everything. Everyone's a family and everyone needs to know. So, because it's our family, this is our brothers, these are our sisters. So you're put on public reproof, which means you have certain privileges taken away, such as you can't comment at the meetings, you can't, sometimes you can't go out field service, you can't give talks and so forth. So it varies on what they say you can or cannot do. And then gradually after they review and check in with you, because they're checking in on your life and seeing what you're doing, if they determine that you've done enough to show that you're repentant, then you will be taken off public reproof. Then the next level is if they determine that you're not repentant. If they determine that you are not sorry for what you did and you don't want to change, then they at that point says that you are disfellowship, which means they're kicking you out of the congregation. You're no longer going to be known as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and you're pretty much excommunicated, or you're pretty much just no longer part of this community of witnesses or this organization, and no one will be talking to you. So those are pretty much what comes out of the whole. That's pretty much going to be the results of those three things. Is pretty much how any type of situation is handled judicially in the congregation. And this is how we're told this is. We're told that this is to cleanse the congregation. One bad apple can spoil the bunch. It's like we're told different things, but ultimately it's for the protection and cleansing of the organization. So that's what we've always known. I understood it because I grew up in it. So I knew what to expect. I knew what was going to happen. I've seen it happen to many brothers and sisters, dear brothers and sisters, plenty of times. I've seen people be put in public reproof. I've seen people being kicked out of the congregation, what happens there. So I knew what to expect. So I already knew the process. I was well versed, as you can say. So I was put on public reproof. I felt relieved because I knew that I wasn't kicked out or disfellowshipped. So at that time I was like, I felt so relieved because I knew that unfortunately I was going to be humiliated, and they were going to announce to the congregation that I am public reproved. So everybody was going to know I did something. But I will at least be able to still talk to people. I will at least still be able to talk to my family, and I will still be considered a Jehovah's Witness just on public reproof because I'm showing that I'm repentant and I didn't do anything that was so sinful that they had to disfellowship me, right? So I remember sitting there as they told me that, and I still was devastated because this was really a lot. This is a traumatizing experience still. And I look at it today, it's like, I did, yes, do these things. I was just being a woman who I was single. I wasn't with anyone for years. I was at that point with my husband, my ex-husband, for like at least 2 years. I was just raising my kids, and I had needs as a woman, and I felt ashamed just doing what I did, which was embracing that part of me, that sensual part of me. I didn't even have sex, but I still felt as if I did, because this was something that I'm taught was just not approved by God. And so it was just really a hard time for me. It was a dark time. I remember sitting in the Kingdom Hall on Wednesday night, because they usually announce mostly on Wednesday nights. They'll announce if anyone's disfellowship or public proof or whatever. And it's like you always know what's coming too, because it's usually right after the second song that we sang. And then before they get into the theocrat ministry, they'll say the brother has an announcement. It'll be silence. They'll come up to the podium, the brother, and he'll announce. And I was humiliated because people were looking at me, of course. And it just was so, the whole experience was just really, really traumatizing, I guess, looking back at it. It was just a lot. It was a lot. But again, the Jehovah's Witness people as a whole, they're still loving people. After the meeting, they came, people really don't want to see, they really feel sad. There's a lot of witnesses that you're going to have different types. You're going to have witnesses who going to gossip. That's anywhere you go. And they're going to say stuff. There's witnesses who genuinely are sad because they don't want to see one of our brothers and sisters lost. So, after being announced, public proof, after the meeting, people came up to me and it's like, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm here for you. I'm so sorry. And so they can still talk to me. Now, think about if I was this fellowship. That's a totally different story. No one could talk to me. Not one person. And it's just like, you're done at that point. But I was publicly reproved. So everyone knew at that point I did something wrong. But they came and did try to encourage me. So I do to this day appreciate that. That the people, the brothers and sisters, they genuinely care about you. It's just unfortunately the Bible principles that we're taught and told is just it's just to control. It's very strict. It's very it's just, that's how it is. So during that process, I was determined to get myself together. I was determined to get myself back. So I made sure to be on point. You feel really guilty. You just feel very low. At that time, you feel like you're not worthy of anything. I think for me, I felt so worthless. It was very hard, but I was determined to get back in good grace with the congregation and back, so I made sure I did everything I could to focus and be, the person that, be approved and do everything by the book with the organization. And I eventually was able to get my privileges back. I was able to start going out on filters again. I was able to start commenting, and it felt so good. I was like, I feel so worthy now, and that's pretty much how that went. For years, I just made sure that I stuck by this religion and kept pushing through to be approved, and it worked. My head was there, and I thought this was it. I thought I was doing what's right. I thought I was really, I was so happy because I just felt like finally I'm doing what I need to do to be saved. I'm saved. I'm approved. And I lived my life like that. And I tried to and I always did the best I could in religion for me and my sons. I think I started realizing when I was falling for someone again. I fell for another person who was just great. And I started having really true, genuine relationships with other people who were my friends. And I had to say to myself, these people cannot be bad. I thought to myself, why are we saying these people that we can't associate with these people, that we can't talk to them, we can't have relationships with friends, people? when we are all different in different ways, but that doesn't mean we're not worthy of love. That doesn't mean God doesn't love us. So I started thinking that just doesn't make sense. And I remember like the whole time I was living this double life, it was so bad on me. I was so stressed that it came to a boiling point. But I had to say to myself, you are a good person. I had to trust myself. And I had to trust that that God loves me. I had to trust that my Heavenly Father loves me whether I'm in this religion or not. And it cannot just be conditional that He only loves me if I'm only in this religion. Because I'm a good person. I genuinely care about people. So how is it that I'm going to die? Just because I'm not in this religion? Just because I'm not doing certain things that you said in the religion I have to do? And I just started realizing that this religion is I just don't want to be here anymore. I just don't, because again, I've always been the person who, again, has been colors outside the lines, who don't color inside the box all the time. Sometimes I want to go outside the box, sometimes I want to use some creative colors. And I always looked at just different things about, life. And one of the things I started realizing was that I really don't want to be in this environment anymore. I don't want to be in this religion. And so I lived a double life for years. In my opinion, you're not really truly allowed to be yourself in this religion. You're allowed to be what's accepted in this religion and whatever version of that you fall into, but not truly allowed to be yourself. And that was something that really stuck with me, and really when I start coming to an understanding and awakening that this just was not the religion for me. I am so in tune now with who I am, my sexuality, and I honestly had to think about it. I've always kind of been what you call an odd person out, or that one unique, different person who kind of marched to beat their own drum. That's been me. And I'm so thankful that to this day I have been that person who marched to the beat of her own drum. I maintained as much as I could my identity within this religion. After a while, when I did decide that I was going to leave, and I started mentally preparing myself for the aftermath, I lived a double life for years, going to the meetings, going out fifth service, proclaiming things that I didn't no longer believe, truths that I didn't believe. And now keep in mind, by this time, I didn't do my research on the religion and really found out that this religion was not teaching us the truth of things, or teaching us, or was withholding a lot of truth from us, really true truths. This was before that. I just knew that I wasn't meant for this religion anymore, and that it just was not serving me, and the life that I was living was not in accordance. But because of fear of my children and me being left in a financially really bad place, which I refused, I just sucked it up, played the nice role in the organization, and then behind closed doors I maintained who I was, my identity, and became true to myself. And I did that for years, and it worked for me for a while, until the beginning of the pandemic started to hit, and pressure started coming on to everyone in the religion, really. In everyone's mind, this was the sign of the end, the last days. And if you didn't get your stuff together, then you pretty much are out of you better get it together, or you about to be destroyed. So you can imagine I was just in a state at that point of depression, sadness, because I believed that I was going to die, because I just knew that this wasn't the religion for me. I knew I wasn't living my life in accordance, and I just knew that I wasn't acceptable. I remember one of my girlfriends, we were just so close, she understood everything was happening. I had to keep our friendship a secret. When my mom found out about it, because my son, he told her, and again, he's a child. He told her, and she was like, so why are you going to her house? Is she a witness? It was those type of questions that I was being presented with, because I was befriending someone who was not a witness. Now let's be clear about a couple of things here. The life that I was living at the time wasn't a bad life. But it wasn't a life that is of a Jehovah's Witness life. I was making decisions that were not based on the teachings that we were taught. You know, I had friends. One of my best friends is a diva. He's gay. And that is completely against the teachings of Jehovah's Witness. But he's my dear friend, and I absolutely adore and love him. And I was not going to deny that part of myself, deny these beautiful relationships with people just because they're not Jehovah's Witnesses and because they're not, because they have a sexual orientation that is not acceptable in the Bible teachings. In my mind, I love all people. And I have this bond with this beautiful person, and I'm not going to no longer stop being and stop following what my heart feels is right. You know, so again, I wasn't, and like I said, there's no right or wrong here. Now that I understand more and understand really what true spirituality is for me, there's no right or wrong here. It's an experience. We're spirit creatures having a human experience. And I truly believe that. But again, at the time, I felt very guilty because I was no longer following the religion's teachings in my life. I was no longer, staying true to those teachings in my heart or things I were doing. I was building a family really outside of the organization. I remember the week before, I just made the decision to just free myself from this religion. I had talked to my mother. And this was around the time where when the pandemic was just like starting, around March 2020, pandemic just started. There was a lot of just fear in the air and just a lot of just a lot of things going on. Things were shifting. The world was changing. And of course, this was, according to the Jehovah's Witness faith, a sign that the end is near. And with my mom being so enthusiastic and she was just such a vigorous woman, very passionate about being saved and being in this religion, and just it could come off a bit aggressive at times, for sure. But I understood now for it to be her passion, her faith, her integrity to the truth that she knows of. And I remember she just kept calling me. She just kept calling me and pressuring me and saying, you need to get it together. Make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do, because the end is here. It's coming. So you make sure you get yourself together and get everything together. And I just remember her just really pressuring me to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do, and I'm, staying firm because the end is here, and just really drilling in on me. And I just remember, with all the pressure from her, from my family, from my sister, I was just like breaking down. Because you have to think about, at this time of my life, I was going to the meetings but not truly there, and I just was not this person who I was taught was favorable in this religion anymore. My life was different. I was celebrating holidays. I was now, celebrating my birthday secretly with my friends, living a life that was mine, but hiding that part of myself. And it became so much at the time with the pressure. My mother just kept pressuring me. And me being a mother myself with 2 boys, we want to see our children succeed. We want to see our children, make the best of themselves. And we have our version of what that looks like because of how we're taught. And so I understand looking at the perspective of being a mom, that she was just doing what she felt is best. And I always say people do what they feel is best But that doesn't mean it's the best for you. Doesn't mean it's the best for us. It doesn't mean there's the best. That's the only way. There's many ways to greatness. But we just, as parents sometimes, and speaking for myself too, we sometimes put our best on our children instead of asking them truly who they are and what they are. So again, I understand the pressure that she was putting on me because I we know, mothers, we know when something's not quite right. And I'm sure my mom knew I was drifting. I'm sure she understood at certain points I just wasn't here. I was, losing my way in this religion. I'm sure she felt that. And for her to try to save me, the best she could, she just was being very passionate about it, very aggressive, and just kept trying to pressure me into however she wants to put it. But for me, I felt pressure. It felt like you were like telling me I have to get myself together. It's no time. And I just couldn't take it. I remember sitting in the car on my lunch break, and I had an anxiety attack with my friend on the phone. I had just anxiety attack. I was hyperventilating, crying, and just couldn't breathe, and it was just really a lot for me. And I knew at that moment it was time. It was definitely time for me to say goodbye to this religion. I wanted to do, since I knew this was it for me and I just couldn't take it anymore, I wanted to make sure I did it in the most respectable way possible for my family, because at the least they deserved that. I felt at this point, because I wasn't, I still felt like this was a religion I wanted to come back to at some point, but I just knew that it wasn't for me at the time. So I still felt guilt and I still felt sadness, but I felt that this was just something I had to do. I couldn't deny this part of myself anymore. I couldn't just keep lying to myself. I did this long enough. It was time for me to go ahead and let this go. Now, of course, knowing how things work, I knew that my family was going to cut me off and stop talking to me. I knew that I was going to be pretty much ostracized and from the congregation, because this is what we do as Jehovah's Witnesses. This is what we're taught. We don't talk to you because now you're pretty much a bad apple in the apple bunch and you're going to spoil the rest. So we have to get that apple out and pretty much isolate it. So I understood and unexpected what happened. But I wanted to make sure at least the thing I did have control over is me saying goodbye. I can do it on my terms or how I wanted to. So what I did was I reached out to my mom first. And I remember I was at the dealership getting my car done. And I was just not trying to do it there. I was not trying to do it. I just let my mom and dad know, hey, I wanted to talk to you guys later. I just got to talk to you about some things, and but not now because I'm at the dealership and whatever. So my mom, of course, doesn't listen. She's like, no, we can talk now. We can talk now. I was like, Mom, no, I don't want to talk here at the dealership. We can talk later. When Dad gets home from work, we'll talk. And I said, so, we'll talk later. So I hang up the phone with her. Now, my mom, again, very aggressive, very passionate. She's definitely an alpha, I would say, to least. She calls me back and says, hey, I have your dad on the phone. So what do you have to say? I'm just like, Mom, I did not want to talk about this here at the dealership. I was so frustrated because I'm just like, this is so my mom. She just doesn't know how to wait. She doesn't know how to just chill. She's just so much, which added to my grief and stress at the time. You just got to know when to stop sometimes. So anyways, I went ahead and told him, I said, listen, I'm not going to be a Jehovah Witness anymore. And at this time, I did decide that I'm going to disassociate myself. I didn't want any part of it. I didn't want anybody reaching out to me, trying to, talk to me about my personal life, especially with what happened before when I so-called sinned and had that situation with the guy I was, seeing shortly on the cruise. When I had that situation where they wanted to know everything about what's going on with me. At that point, I just knew I'm not talking to any brothers. I'm not talking to any elders. This is the decision I'm making. I will talk to my cousin, who is an elder in the congregation, and I trust and I know he can convey and do what I need to do. So I did write a letter. I'm disassociating myself, and I wanted to make sure I told my family respectfully so they understand. So I explained to my mom and my dad at the time at the dealership, which I did not want to do, but was forced to, that, I made a decision to leave the organization. I'm going to disassociate myself. And I remember my mom saying to me, I just wanted to tell you, you have been a wonderful daughter to me. You've been a wonderful daughter, but you're making a mistake. And it is too late. You don't have any time left. And I can hear her say, and this is just how she said it, you don't have any time left in this world. And she just started getting aggressive again. I had to tell her, look, I had to say, you know what, stop. I had to tell my mom, stop. Because you're not going to pressure me. You're not going to keep pressuring me. And my mom was like, I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just telling you this is what it is. She doesn't understand that you are pressuring. You're aggressive. You can't force these things on people, And it's like you can't. We have to make those decisions on our own. And so she just was so aggressive on the phone. Now my dad, of course, the opposite of her. And my dad, who's in the religion. Well, not my biological father, but my dad, who I grew up with since I was a baby. And he's become a dear, dear father of mine as well. He was very calm and like he's always is. And I appreciated the calmness. And they, of course, both of them tried to, encourage me not to do this. My mom in her own way, my dad in his way, of course. And this is, again, something I had to do. And, it was really hard to do it, but I did it. And things went fairly quickly because I made sure I talked to my cousin. I told him we had a long, emotional, intense conversation. We were really close, very close cousins, and it was very hurtful. I understand it was very hurtful for both of us. It broke my heart to say I have to leave. It broke his heart because he didn't want me to go, but he was very understanding. He understood what happened. I talked to my sister, and I was even trying to tell her that day, and it came out that day because she's like, "When do you got to tell me something too?" It was just like, it really, like, those two scenarios were just not really planned. It was kind of more spontaneous, but at that point, I'm not a person to lie. I've never been that type of person. So, I told her too. We had an intense conversation as well where she didn't really understand and she felt hurt. I think a lot of it, even my brother-in-law, he was like, how could you do this to me? They were taking it very personally. And it wasn't something personally attacking them. This was a decision I made for myself. And I had to let them know, I helped them to understand that this isn't personal. In no way or form is this personally to you. This is a decision I am making. But see, this is, again, how we're taught in the religion. It is hurtful because we know that now we have to no longer talk to this person and no longer associate with this person. So it can be personal to them. So I did try to I didn't understand why they felt that way, but it was a choice I had to make for myself. And sometimes you have to make these choices for yourself, you know, and I had to make that. It was a hard choice. That week, I remember that week was so rough. I cried a lot. I remember the very next day the boys wanted to see my mom or something happened, and my mom, because she had my key and I had her key. We had each other's keys for just, like backup. I remember the next day, my mom, when I dropped off my sons, she had London stop the car. I was driving about the driveway, and she had him stop. And she handed me my key and demanded for hers back. Since I was no longer welcomed into their house. And that was the very next day. I got a text from my father saying that I am kicked off of the family plan, that was the last thing I had tied to my family. Was we were on a family cell phone plan. And I had got, the next text was I got kicked off the family plan the next day. And he already called them, set it up so that they can just have it set up in my name only. And I kind of already was preparing for these things, so I made sure that I was in a place financially where I can support myself, my kids, because I knew that financial support that I did have was gone. I knew that the emotional support was gone. I knew all that was gone, so I prepared myself to make sure that I can at least make sure we're good to go without any of that support. So everything happened pretty much just like I thought. Kicked off the plan. My mom, I found out a couple from the boys that my mom deleted my number on her phone. She doesn't want the boys to mention my name to her. Now, I made it so that the boys it was just me who disassociated. The boys were not baptized, they're unbaptized, so they're not officially a witness. And so it was they weren't really affected. And I wanted to be that way because I didn't want them, because you have to think about this whole time, we did everything together as a family, traveled together as a family, we went to the meetings together, we did so much, we're very close as a family and the boys, and I didn't want to just disconnect that life from them. So I made sure first, before I even told my family, I made sure I told my boys, talked to them, made sure they understood, and they were okay. They were actually very much okay with what happened with me, leaving. I wanted to make sure they were good because it's almost like a divorcing. You're like going through a divorce. It's like a major, huge thing for the family, and I wanted them to be affected as least as possible. So they still had contact with my family, and they still have contact with my family now, where they can go see them and associate with them. It's just me. And so they are not as affected, but because I, again, made the decision to leave, I am the one who's ostracized out of the organization, the community, my family, pretty much isolated, and they are no longer talking to me. So it's been well over 2 years now of me not having any communication with my family, on any level, at all, really. So if something happened to me today, they would find out probably through the boys. So that whole week, going back, was, it was heavy. It was really heavy. It was really heavy on my heart. I didn't feel like I was a good person, but I knew that I couldn't be in this religion anymore because I didn't want to stop being me. I didn't want to stop living the life that I was living. I wanted to still be free of those restrictions, those just limited beliefs, just that culture, that religion, that whole thing. It wasn't for me anymore. And so I knew that this was the right decision because even though it was so heavy, I felt such a relief. I just felt like the weight was lifted off of me and I can start healing.
When you think about the term unconditional love, that term pretty much means you're loving without any limitations, any restrictions.
You know, my friends are still in disbelief that my family has not talked to me for years now. And I have to just let them know that, you know, when you're taught for years that the disfellowshipping arrangement that is made in a congregation is to heal, when you're taught that abandoning your family or making that choice to no longer contact them or support them in their lives is a choice of salvation for yourself, that's hard to beat. When you have to make a choice between your child or your family member, your sister, your friend, when you're taught that communication means a lack of faith on your behalf, and that when someone chooses to free themselves or when someone chooses a different path, instead of having that unconditional love for that person, you are taught that this is a test of faith, of how much you are faithful to God. And it's a choice that you have to make in order to be saved. That can be, and it's ingrained in you that this is for their good. That's at the forefront of their decision. And I understand it because I lived it. I was there in that mentality where when someone got disfellowship, they did something wrong, I can't talk to them, or they chose a different path that is not a faithfulness, so they don't deserve to be speaking to, and they don't deserve to have help. But this is going to help them being ostracized. This is something that's going to help them come back to us. I used to think that. I used to think that once you leave the faith of Jehovah's Witnesses, once you leave what you call the truth, your life is going to be really, really bad. There's no way to even think of this being the right decision, leaving this religion. No. There's no way that could be true, because then everything we were taught was a lie. And who wants to face that? So, me understanding that there's different reasons why people do things, but this religion, what it has taught us, what it has taught people in the religion, it goes deeper. So what this meant for me, which I knew, was my family was going to shun me. My family was going to stop talking to me, because this was their test now of being faithful or not in this religion. And it's so sad that we're taught to love under conditions and not unconditionally loving one another, because that's exactly what it is. When we're shunning ones out the congregation, when those ones are shunning people out the congregation, they're telling them, we love you, but you have to come back in order for us to really truly show you the love that you need. We can love you from afar unconditionally. We can't really give you the love or approval, not really fully knowing sometimes why they were kicked out or why they decided to leave, right? This is just a law they have to uphold, because then at that point, eyes will be turned to them. It's quite sad, and I understood that, so I knew that my family were not going to talk to me after I decided to leave, and that's exactly what happened. They just stopped talking to me. I would say this experience, this religion, the takeaways I have from this is I am so thankful that I was able to see past the control. I'm just so thankful that I was able to trust myself. Because in this process, I said to myself, yes, it's bad right now. Yes, I am lost and I don't know what to do. And yes, I might even die because I'm not in this religion. But I have to take the chance. I have to figure out who I am. I got to figure out what my path is. And I cannot no longer be in this place. I can no longer stay in this religion. And because it just doesn't seem right. I have to trust my intuition. I have to trust myself and know that I am going to be okay. So I took the steps to break free. And I started with researching. I didn't know, I still thought that this religion was still the religion I would eventually at some point come back to until I researched. And I did some research and found out some things that really was very quite just enlightening. It was very quite awakening. And it just solidified that me trusting myself, me trusting my intuition was the right way to go. And I feel so blessed. I feel so good. It's a process. It's a long process of healing. But I look back on the situation now, and I am so thankful that I trusted myself. I am so thankful because me and my boys, we are so much more happier now. They are so much more freer. They're able to truly be themselves and not feel judged and not feel unworthy and that they're going to suffer destruction or die. You know, we're able to live a life that's ours now. And that's just the most beautiful thing. You know, you can be locked up. You can be really locked up even being an adult, and I still was like living under the laws and still had to, like, I was 30 years old, still, my mom was still treating me like a child in this religion. Did you study today? Are you talking to the boys about what you talked to? I mean, it's like I was always constantly scrutinized. I was always constantly told. And I know it's, again, looking back, I understand she was just trying to keep me woke in this religion. But I just knew that it doesn't have to be this hard. I just knew that it doesn't have to be this hard. And I'm the type of person, why can't I just be me? Why can I be me and not have to worry about every time I say something is wrong, or when I dress a certain way is not approved, or if I want a certain hairstyle I have to go by, ask the brothers, or ask my mom, or ask people, do you think this will be okay? When I go pick stuff out, I can't pick things based upon what I want. I pick because, oh, this might not show enough, or this might be too sexual. What if I want to be sexual? What if I want to be crazy? What if I want to be out the box? You know what I'm saying? What if I want to have friends who may like the same sex? They're good people. Why do I have to hide that part of me? I said, no, I don't want to do that no more. And I trusted myself, and I said, I know this is going to be hard because you're in the darkness right now, but I saw the light. I saw light shining through. I knew I just had to walk towards it. So that's exactly what I did. I walked towards the light. I started looking up a couple things, and then I started realizing, OMG, we've been lied to. I started realizing that things are just not adding up. I was asking questions before I even, made it known that I didn't want to do this anymore, because there were still things I did not agree with in that religion, and I needed some answers. So I went ahead and started asking some questions. I started looking into the organization and looking into some material that they had, and saw that a lot of things were contradicting itself, and it just didn't make sense. One of the beliefs that I completely did not agree with was the belief of abstaining from blood, and I did not agree with that. And I just felt like that was one of the things that really got me taken back when I started delving into more research on what happened and what has been done with that. And that was one of the beliefs that really solidified me not going back there. We really truly walk by faith. We really do. But the truth of the matter is, when you start doing your research and understanding things, there's a lot of cracks in this religion. There's a lot of things and truths that are not really truths. So I really started being like, oh my goodness, what in the world is happening right now with this religion? What in the world did I get into? And it woke me up real quick, honey. It woke me up to the fact that what I thought was the only true religion isn't. Now I'm gonna say this. I understood that this was a lot of things that were taught is not biblical. And I understand that these paths of this religion truly is not for me. And I understood that a lot of things we were being taught was not even true. But I'll truly say this. I've seen lives being transformed. I've seen people turn from drug addicts to approved because they wanted to serve God. So I truly believe, even though this religion teaches a lot of false teachings, and a lot of things that are teaching in there is not according to the Bible, like we're told. But people are still good people in the religion, and everybody has their own story. And if this religion has done good for people, then that's good for them. But for me, this religion was holding me back from my truths. This religion was not allowing me to really step into who I truly am meant to be, who I'm destined to be. And I have to own that part of that. And unfortunately, I just know that this is no longer going to be the religion that I can be a part of any longer. And I have to tell you that this has been the best decision I have made in my life. This whole lifestyle of being Jehovah's Witness is traumatizing, not only mentally, physically it takes a toll, emotionally, and I got to a point where I just knew that I was meant for something different. I'm in this beautiful space in my life now where I put in the work. I simply did that. I put in the work. And let me tell you something I discovered along the way of letting go and letting in what's truly meant for me is that it is so important for anyone, and especially if it's just so important for me to know that I am enough. And I realized that everything I need is here. Literally. I just had to trust myself. I just had to trust myself and know that I'm enough. After going through those stages of emotions and starting my healing process, I had to start learning and understanding who I was, what I wanted, because in this religion you lose your identity in a sense. I had to discover now, who am I? Throughout this journey, I had to really peer deep inside of my soul, deep inside of me. And let me tell you, honey, that is not easy. It is not easy. It's really, really being real with yourself and just knowing that there's so many limited beliefs now, so many things that I had to free myself of. And honestly, even now, even though I'm at a place of growth, I'm at a place of healing, ultimately I know who I am now. I'm still working on limited beliefs and getting rid of them. Now it's more so about, I know how to identify. Oh, okay, no. Why do I think this way? Why am I like this way? Oh, this is limited belief. So now I'm at a place I can identify those things and work on them as they come up. Because what you're going to understand is that when you start peering deep into yourself, when you start really understanding now who you are, because you don't have this religion controlling you, you don't have this controlled space, you're not being programmed any longer, you're now breaking down those programs, you start really truly removing that layer and understanding more so who you are, what your purpose is, what do you want in life, what is true happiness, What is true love? How do you love yourself? How do you move forward? You just start discovering a lot of those truths. I discovered a lot of them just by taking the first step. The first step was saying no and saying yes to me. That was the first step. Healing is something that you can't put a time on. For me, I just had to work on myself. I did journaling, I scripted, I started, I binge reading, I've been watching. I made sure I put myself in a space with like-minded people. I made sure I filled my life and my son's life with positivity always. And it really has truly just kept me in this warmness and beautiful space where I can really give to others. I can truly say that my life now is the life of my own. I love myself so much now, and every day is a process of loving myself. Every day is a process of showing myself grace. Every day is a process of, getting to that place where, and I'm at the place now I can truly say I look back on what happened to me with love. Forgiveness is, for me, forgiveness is when you can smile and think about what happened to you and say, it's okay. It happened. I'm not mad. So when I think back to the fact that my family is just probably never going to speak to me again. And I say this because I know other witnesses that literally their parents haven't talked to them in 10 years. So I have a pretty good idea that I may not have any communication anymore with my family. And you know what? That's okay, because I still love them. I don't hold any ill will towards my family. I am so happy. I am so thankful that I'm out that situation, that I can't hold hate in my heart. There's none there. I only have love for them. And I just hope that they at some point see the truth. But if not, that's their story. My story is that I was meant for more. My story is I was not meant for a situation where I couldn't be myself. I was not meant for a life any longer where I was held in chains of rules, of restrictions, of how to live, of how to be, of who to love. No, I trust myself enough to know that I can make the right decisions in my life. I trust myself enough that the light is always ahead and around me. And it's like walking in the unknown. You don't know what the future holds. You don't really know what's ahead. You just believe that God got you. The universe got you. And I was like, you know what? I know I'm going to be okay. Because at the end of the day, I may not know what's ahead, but I know me. And I have to trust that I'm going to always make the best decision for me and my family. And walk on faith and walk in God. Now that I've left this religion, I can truly say that I have an even better relationship with the universe, God, the source, however you want to say it. I have such a better relationship because I truly understand that true spirituality does not have to be just put in a religion. True spirituality is within me. I am true spirituality. And I have to trust my inner compass because it was given to me by the universe, right? I have to trust myself to know that I am enough. And I am enough. And so I've really, truly embraced that part of me. And honestly, I've seen so many beautiful things happen since that part that I'm so thankful of to this day. I am so thankful. I wake up every morning with a smile. I wake up with internal happiness because I am free. I am free. I'm no longer in this religion, and I am so happy. It's a level of freedom that is priceless. I don't know, words can't even describe. Now I'm gonna tell you this. During this process, I realized, and I say around like last year or so, I started understanding what my true purpose was. And I started realizing, girl, you special. You special because the shit I went through, a lot of people they probably couldn't even handle it. But I was created, I was built for this. And now that I am in this free space, and I continually work towards maintaining that level of freedom within myself, I realized that my purpose is to just share, just to help others to see that what you need lies within yourself, and you just got to take the first step. So I started I started going through a process where I needed to discover like what I want to do with my life. And during that process, I had to think about, what do you like to do? And one of the things that I always go back to is I love to help people to see there's beautiful. One of the things I just realized that I love to do is just to help others to understand their true power, help others through my experience understand that you can live the life of your dreams. You can live a life that is yours. You can be happy, like inner happiness, because there's levels of happiness too. Or you might be faking yourself and say you're happy, but you really ain't. I can truly say that. I know what it feels to be like putting a smile on your face, but internally you suffering. I know what it feels to have a battle within yourself and not knowing what to do. And I know what it feels like to let that shit go, and to know that it don't have to be so hard. It could be easy. You could be happy every day you wake up. We deserve that. We deserve the truth. We deserve to live a life that is ours and not anyone else. But it's a choice that you have to make. So with that, I knew that my purpose, and because my purpose was to help others to see that as well. So what I decided to do is to become a life coach. I went and got my certification, took classes, and fell into this life of wonderfulness where I get to really help ones look within themselves. And I have to say, I am so happy. Like, I have to truly say that it is truly a joy, a blessing, a privilege to be able to talk to ones and see and help them through their journey of learning that they are enough. And when you see the process, and when I saw the process with my clients of how they went to what they were in the mindset of lack and a mindset of not knowing, doubt, and then they start to transform themselves into this person of confidence, this person who knew who they were. They started seeing positive things happening around them when they shifted their minds, their hearts. They started seeing how the universe blessed them in many ways. It's priceless. You can't put price on that. And I'm just so thankful that now I'm in a part of my life where I can help others to be themselves, to know that they are good enough, to know that they are enough. Just trust yourself. Just look within yourself. I'm just like so thankful. I'm so happy. And I would not take anything back. Not one experience, not one tear, not one hurt feeling, none of that. Because what happened to me, even though I I should not have went through that. I should not have to go through those things. It happened to me. I am thankful for who I became because of that situation. I'm not thankful for the situation itself, because no one should have to go through those things. But I am thankful for who I am now because of that situation, and how I can now help others to walk in their faith, to take that first step and believe in themselves and know that it will be okay. Yes, the road may be not clear. Yes, you may be walking on faith, literally, because you have no clue what's going to happen. Yes, you may lose your whole life. Yes, you may lose your family. But at the end, you are going to be okay. And at the end, you will discover that you are enough. And everything that you need will come to you. Every single thing. So, that's it, I guess. That's all for you folks. Yeah. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time to share my story with me and walking with me on this journey. I hope this has really truly been a help for all those ones who need the help. I hope you, make the decision that's right for you. The truths are always there for us to find. You just got to have the courage to start looking. It takes courage to say no to things that doesn't serve you. It's not an easy task, I know, but it is worth it. It's worth every single step. And I look back now and I say, when I tell you, I am so blessed. I am so happy. Just so happy. So here's to the future. Here's to me walking in my path and remaining there. And why there's so many. And here's to endless possibilities. My future is so bright. And I'm just, so happy. So thank you again for allowing me to share my journey as a Jehovah's Witness. It's much appreciated and never forgotten.